Committee on Oversight and Government Reform will come to order, and without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. As we get going, I need to first express my thoughts and prayers to my colleague, Elijah Cummings, and what the people of Baltimore are going through. Our hearts and prayers and thoughts are with you and your neighbors and your friends and your community, the police officers, and we're proud of you and the way you're conducting this and getting through it, and you're a true leader. I would hope the people of Baltimore and Maryland would listen to your message, but know that our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to take this moment to not only thank you, but thank the members of our committee and who have expressed their concern about Baltimore. And you, Mr. Chairman, have a kind of unique perspective because you had a chance to visit Baltimore with me before you even became chairman, and so you had a chance to see what the issues are in our city. So I'm looking forward to working with you and others to try to, heal some of that pain. And I do appreciate you, and I will never forget your visit. And people in my city will not forget your visit. And thank you for your comments.
Well, thank you. We will be conducting this hearing a little differently today. I'm going to ask unanimous consent that we're going to change the order here, that we will recognize our panel, allow them to give their opening statements, and then we will go into recess. We will reconvene. We will give our opening statements, and then we will get into questions. But given that we have the very historic presence of the Japanese Prime Minister here to address a joint session of Congress, we're particularly sensitive that, for instance, one of our witnesses, the House Sergeant of Arms, Mr. Paul Irving, has to leave us early in order to fulfill his duties. And to accommodate his schedule, I'd ask unanimous consent to forego opening statements for us. We will come back and give them later and swear in the witnesses and begin their testimony. Without objection, so ordered. We'll get as far as we can in recess so members can join the joint session. We'll reconvene 30 minutes after the conclusion of the joint session to continue our hearing. Without objection, so ordered. So we will now recognize our panel of witnesses. First, we have the Honorable Paul Irving, Sergeant of Arms at the United States House of Representatives. Mr. Irving is accompanied by Mr. Tom Blodgett, Deputy Sergeant of Arms, whose expertise may be needed during questioning. We also have Admiral William Gortney, Commander of NORAD, the U.S. NORTHCOM. Mr. Robert, help me with the pronunciation, Salas, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense or Homeland Defense Integration and Defense Support of Civil Authorities at the United States Department of Defense. The Honorable Michael Huerta, Administrator of the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. The Honorable Joseph Clancy, Director of the United States Secret Service. Mr. Robert McLean, Chief of the United States Park Police, and Mr. Kim Dine, Chief of the United States Capitol Police. We welcome you all. Pursuant to committee rules, all witnesses are to be sworn before they testify. Mr. Blodgett, you are included as well. We would ask that all members, or all the panel, please rise and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may be seated. Let the record reflect that all the witnesses answered in the affirmative. All of your written statements will be entered into the record. We would ask that you would limit your verbal comments to 5 minutes. We're going to recognize Mr. Irving first. At the conclusion of those remarks, we are going to excuse him so he can tend to the duties of escorting the Prime Minister into the House of Representatives. Mr. Irving, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Cummings, and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. As Sergeant at Arms and Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the House of Representatives, I'm fully dedicated to ensuring the safety of the entire Capitol complex, a mission performed in close partnership and cooperation with the U.S. Capitol Police Board and the men and women of the United States Capitol Police. Before I begin, though, I'd like to extend my thanks to all the men and women of the U.S. Capitol Police for their capable and professional response to the incident on April 15th. U.S. Capitol Police officers and officials promptly responded to the West Front and arrested the individual and ensured the craft was harmless. We're currently working closely with our partners in federal law enforcement, the Departments of Defense, Transportation, and Homeland Security to maintain robust airspace security within the challenging confines of the urban environment of the National Capital Region. In particular, working with our partners to ensure the most efficient and robust early detection, tracking, and warning systems, ensuring there is consistent and constant interagency communication and early warning and communicated in real time, improving and ensuring immediate and ongoing communications and alerts to members and staff during a security incident, and honing the countermeasures and policies consistent with those countermeasures. Since the event, I've ordered the Chief of the Capitol Police to utilize the House Notification System to alert members, staff, and to the extent possible, visitors in as timely a manner as possible to alert regarding all life safety and potentially threatening events that affect the Capitol community. The incident on April 15th reminds us all that the greatest asset of the Capitol, its very openness and accessibility, can at times be one of our greatest challenges. However, every incident allows us to refine our capabilities, enhance our training, and be better prepared for every eventuality. I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you, and please be excused and tend to your duties. We thank you, and we look forward to seeing you back at the conclusion of that event. Admiral, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Chaffetz, Ranking Member Cummings, and distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to be here today. From a national security perspective, I want to emphasize the sensitivity of these discussions in an unclassified environment. An open discussion of even unclassified information could be pieced together to pose a risk to our national security. Therefore, I cannot go into many of the specific details I deem sensitive in an unclassified environment. However, in a closed session, I'm ready and able to talk to you in much detail as you need. NORAD's role is to provide aerospace warning and control to defend the United States and Canada, including the National Capital Region, from all potential air threats. The airspace surrounding the National Capital Region, known as the Washington, D.C. Special Flight Rules Area, is monitored by a sophisticated integrated air defense system, which is a vast network of radars, cameras, and other detection warning devices. Each system is designed to detect, track, and monitor specific parameters. The integrated air defense system was implemented following and in direct response to the terrorist attacks of 9/11 and has continued to evolve with the threat over time. We are extremely capable of identifying and attracting potential threats to the National Capital Region, anything from commercial aviation down to small, single propeller-sized aircraft like Cessnas. However, a small manned gyrocopter or similar low-altitude, low-speed aerial vehicles, despite its assessed low threat, presents a technical challenge. This is an interagency effort that collectively understands the technical challenges associated with these types of threats and vehicles, and with our partners here at the table, we will continue to implement technical and procedural solutions to close any seams. I know the committee has questions, and I look forward to talking with you today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Salas.
Thank you, Chairman Chaffetz, Ranking Member Cummings, and distinguished members of the committee. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to address the Department of Defense's role in securing the airspace of Washington, D.C. I'd like to acknowledge that aspects of this issue are very sensitive to the Department of Defense from a national security standpoint. I look forward to continuing this discussion in a classified setting. Because I know there is much to discuss, I will be brief. To this end, there are 4 points I would like to emphasize today. Number one, defending the United States is the Department of Defense's highest priority. Number two, the Department of Defense is well postured to defend the United States. Number three, the Department works very closely with its federal partners and law enforcement to protect the national capital airspace. And last, the Department continually pursues opportunities to enhance our homeland defense capabilities. The national security strategy makes it clear the United States government has no greater responsibility than protecting the American people. Our national defense strategy makes protecting and defending the homeland the Department's first priority. To the men and women of the Department of Defense, military and civilian, these specific words are the reason they serve and the very core for their professional lives, Every day, these fine men and women, whether serving here at home or some far-off location across the globe, dedicate themselves to protecting the American people and defending the United States. Due to the leadership of the President, the Secretary of Defense, and the Congress's steadfast support, DoD is well postured with the authorities and capabilities necessary to defend the homeland. Under Admiral Gortney's leadership and command, the men and women of NORAD execute Operation Noble Eagle, monitoring the U.S. airspace, conducting military operations to dissuade, deter, and if necessary, defeat airborne threats. In this effort to secure the skies over our nation's capital, the men and women of the Department of Defense do not serve alone. They are joined by their counterparts at the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Transportation, the Department of Justice, and our law enforcement partners in a whole-of-government approach to protecting the national airspace. Working together, we have built a network of barriers to protect the national airspace system against any and all threats. We have improved our threat detection capabilities, integrated our threat responses, and refined our procedures to optimize response effectiveness. We continually look for opportunities to improve our defenses. We understand that no matter how good we are, the adversary remains committed, and we can always be better. To this end, we're dedicated to continual improvement of our policies, procedures, and operational capabilities. Working with our federal partners, we test, we plan, we exercise to improve our effectiveness. This is what the nation expects. We're committed to meeting this expectation, and this is our obligation. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. We appreciate your leadership, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, and your support of the men and women of the Department of Defense. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Huerta.
Thank you, Chairman Chaffetz, Ranking Member Cummings, members of the committee, for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'd like to address your questions about the recent gyrocopter incident by explaining the FAA's role in airspace security and how we coordinate with other agencies. First and foremost, the FAA's mission is aircraft and airspace safety. We operate the nation's air traffic control system in order to separate aircraft. Our primary focus is on getting aircraft safely to their destinations and managing the flow of thousands of aircraft and their passengers around the country every day. In addition to the FAA's safety mission, we also work very closely with the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security on a daily basis to support their aviation security missions, particularly here in the Capital Region. As part of that support, we provide them a raw air traffic radar feed so they have situational awareness of what is happening in our national airspace system. To enable our controllers to safely control air traffic, the first thing we have to do is distinguish the aircraft that are communicating with controllers from all other objects in the air that are not aircraft. These other objects that the radar detects could be things like vehicles on nearby roadways, flocks of birds, weather events, or occasional kites and balloons. Air traffic controllers could not do their jobs if they had to work with an unfiltered radar feed. They would not be able to distinguish the aircraft they're charged with safely handling from other elements on their radar scopes. We require aircraft that fly in the airspace around Washington, D.C. and other large cities across the country to use transponders that broadcast basic information, such as the type of aircraft, its speed, direction, and altitude. When radar detects those aircraft, it picks up the transponder information and it displays it on an air traffic controller's radar screen. Controllers can see all the flights in a specific area along with the identifying information from each aircraft. Anything that doesn't have a transponder shows up as an image representing a simple small dot on the radar screen, and there are typically many of them across a controller's radar screen. To assist controllers in focusing on safely managing air traffic, we apply filters to the controller's radar to eliminate the vast majority of those small dots. Safely managing air traffic is a controller's mission, and they must be able to do that without distraction. Now, to support national and homeland security, the FAA shares a real-time, unfiltered radar feed with our partners at the Department of Defense and several other agencies. We do that so they have the same information that we have, and so they can apply the appropriate filters for their own mission to protect the airspace. We also embed technical air traffic staff at a number of North American Aerospace Defense Command facilities around the country to provide additional operating expertise and support. On April 15, Mr. Hughes' gyrocopter appeared on our radar as one of those small, unidentified elements, indistinguishable from all other non-aircraft radar tracks. The National Capital Region Coordination Center called the FAA at 1:24 p.m. that afternoon to alert us to the flight based on information they received from the U.S. Capitol Police. After the incident, we conducted a forensic radar analysis and looked for an image that might match Mr. Hughes' gyrocopter. We understood he had taken off from a small airport in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and we had an approximate time. So we looked at unfiltered radar data. A trained radar analyst identified a slow-moving image that traveled from Gettysburg toward the Capitol and vanished from radar at about the time Mr. Hughes landed on the West Lawn. We now believe that unidentified radar element was Mr. Hughes' gyrocopter, but the dot appeared only intermittently throughout that flight. When we got the call from the Capitol Police, we immediately notified our interagency partners on the Domestic Events Network, or DEN, a 24-hour, 7-days-a-week communication line we operate to support a shared situational awareness among our agency partners. We initiated the DEN more than a decade ago to quickly share information about activity in the airspace with multiple agencies. It now includes more than 130 federal and local agencies, as well as major FAA air traffic facilities around the country. The DEN has played a critical role in disseminating important operational information to other agencies as quickly as possible. Each agency has a responsibility to announce an airspace incident on the DEN as soon as they know about it. We're committed to our safety mission at the FAA, and we're dedicated to working closely with all of our airspace security partners to support protection of our airspace. We're assisting the Department of Homeland Security in its ongoing interagency review, and this is in addition to our own internal review to ensure that FAA employees followed all the proper procedures and protocols during the event. If we need to make changes as a result of these efforts, we will, and I will keep the committee informed. I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Director Clancy.
Good morning, Chairman Chaffetz, Ranking Member Cummings, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to discuss the Secret Service's role within the broader effort to secure the airspace in the National Capital Region, or the NCR. The long-standing relationships between interagency partners, many of which are represented here today, are critical to ensuring the security of people and places given protection by the Secret Service and others. The Secret Service must be prepared to confront and defeat evolving threats, including those from small manned and unmanned aircraft systems. As these technologies become both more advanced and more widely available, the Secret Service will continue to work aggressively with our partners to address existing threats and anticipate those to come. Existing FAA flight restrictions in the NCR were enhanced following the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The FAA implemented the Special Flight Rules Area, which includes within its boundaries the Flight Restricted Zone and Prohibited Area P56, or Area 56. The White House, the Vice President's residence, and the U.S. Capitol are located within the P56. The Secret Service's role in the administration of the restricted airspace is limited to issuing waivers for access to the P56 in consultation with the Capitol Police and the Park Police. Airspace security for the NCR is coordinated by the Interagency National Capital Region Coordination Center. The center was created after the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks to provide real-time information sharing and tactical coordination to address potential airborne threats in and around the Washington, D.C. area. It is staffed at all times with specially trained personnel assigned to the Secret Service Airspace Security Branch, in addition to representatives from the military, the FAA, and selected federal civilian law enforcement agencies. The mission of the Secret Service Airspace Security Branch is to give early notification to the Protective Details and Uniform Division and provide real-time information to allow appropriate time to make informed decisions about actions to take to ensure the security of our protectees and protected sites. Given the pace at which events can unfold in an air incursion, maximizing the time to react is critical. Presently, the Airspace Security Branch combines radar feeds from a number of sources to create an image of the airspace. This image is monitored by the detection system specialists who have military or civilian radar backgrounds. With respect to the history between the Secret Service and Douglas Mark Hughes, the pilot from the April 15th incident, Hughes first came to the attention of the Secret Service on October 4, 2013. At that time, the Secret Service obtained information that Hughes intended to fly a single-seat aircraft onto the grounds of the Capitol or the White House with no specific time frame provided. That same day, the Secret Service relayed the information to our law enforcement partners at the Capitol Police. The following day, special agents from the Secret Service interviewed Hughes, who denied owning an aircraft or having plans to fly one to Washington, D.C. However, subsequent cooperative interviews revealed differently. Further, the investigation revealed no evidence of an interest in persons or places protected by the Secret Service, and information regarding Hughes was made available to other interested law enforcement agencies in the National Capital Region. Regarding events leading up to the April 15th incident, I want to be clear. At no time did the Secret Service receive actionable advance notice or any information that this event was taking place. While the Secret Service received telephone calls on the date of the incident, at no time was information provided in the calls that would have alerted our personnel to the fact that Hughes was piloting his aircraft to the Capitol. As the gyrocopter flew in the direction of the Capitol, it was observed by Secret Service personnel in the area of the White House complex. These individuals subsequently relayed that information through their chain of command. While in the process of making the appropriate notifications, the aircraft landed and the incident was acknowledged on the FAA Domestic Events Network, effectively notifying all relevant parties. That day and the days that followed, the Secret Service field offices gathered information regarding Hughes and his activities leading up to the event. While the Capitol Police are the lead investigative agency in this matter, the Secret Service stands ready to continue to contribute any resources necessary and to work collectively with our partners. Protection of the President, his family, and the White House is paramount to this agency. The partnerships represented here today are critical to the success of our mission as it relates to effectively addressing airborne threats. Continued interagency coordination is vital to ensuring safety and security in the airspace of the NCR. Chairman Chaffetz, Ranking Member Cummings, and members of the committee, this concludes my testimony, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank the Director. Chief McLean, you're now recognized.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Cummings, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the United States Park Police involvement in the April 15, 2015 gyrocopter incident in Washington, D.C. My name is Robert McLean. I am the Chief of the United States Park Police. The United States Park Police, established in 1791, is the oldest uniformed federal law enforcement agency in the United States. The Park Police, which is primarily responsible for safety and crime prevention in parklands administered by the National Park Service, has enjoyed a long history of partnership and coordination with the numerous public safety, protection, aviation, and defense agencies within the National Capital Region. In the District of Columbia, the Park Police has primary jurisdiction over federal parkland, which comprises approximately 22% of the District of Columbia, including the National Mall, East and West Potomac Parks, Rock Creek Park, Anacostia Park, McPherson Square, and many of the small triangle parks in the district. The Park Police officers who proudly and diligently patrol federal parkland every day are trained to identify, report, and investigate violations of law and suspicious or unusual activity. Although the Park Police has an aviation unit that flies law enforcement, medevac, and search and rescue missions within the National Capital Region, the Park Police does not have primary responsibility of airspace defense over the federal parklands. As such, the Park Police does not have radar detection capability to monitor that airspace, nor does it have the appropriate tools to engage or defend against an aircraft in the airspace above these parks. Those primary responsibilities and capabilities rest with other federal agencies. On Wednesday, April 15, 2015, at approximately 1:20 p.m., a Park Police officer observed and reported an aircraft, later identified as a gyrocopter, operated by Mr. Doug Hughes. It was operating near the Lincoln Memorial and estimated it to be approximately 100 feet off the ground and traveling eastbound towards the United States Capitol. The officer made a request to the Park Police Dispatch Center to contact the United States Capitol Police. A patrol supervisor confirmed the observation and requested the Park Police Dispatch Center notify the Park Police Aviation Unit, which in turn contacted the National Capital Region Coordination Center to report an aircraft in restricted airspace. Another Park Police officer observed and followed the aircraft eastbound in his patrol vehicle to where the aircraft landed on the west grounds of the United States Capitol. The Park Police officer arrived at the Capitol grounds and observed the U.S. Capitol Police arresting Mr. Hughes. At that point, the Park Police became an assisting agency to the United States Capitol Police on the scene and at their command post. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my statement. I'll be pleased to respond to any questions you and other members may have.
Thank you. Chief Dunn, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Cummings, members of the committee, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss the event that occurred on Wednesday, April 15th, and the actions taken by the United States Capitol Police. I will begin by providing a timeline of the events and will gladly answer any questions that you may have. It is important to note that this is an ongoing criminal investigation. On Wednesday, April 15th at 12:59 p.m., an individual from the Tampa Bay Times sent an email to the U.S. Capitol Police Public Information Officer stating that a local man was planning on flying a gyrocopter as part of a protest and would be attempting to land on the West Front. This individual inquired if the USCP was aware of the flight and if permission had been obtained. No time or date information was provided regarding this flight. At 1 p.m., the same individual called the USCP Command Center and stated to an officer that he had information about a man who was planning to fly a drone onto the mall and onto the west front of the Capitol. He stated that he had called the U.S. Secret Service, and they advised him to call the United States Capitol Police. He also stated that this man, who identified as Douglas Hughes, had received permission from the U.S. Secret Service and the USCP, and he was calling to confirm the permission was granted. No time or date or actionable information was provided regarding the flight during this telephone call either. The officer advised this individual that she was not aware of any approvals to land a drone. They were then transferred to a sergeant in the command center, and this individual repeated what he had told the officer, except now he referred to the aircraft as a gyrocopter. The sergeant advised that no approval existed for a gyrocopter to land on the Capitol grounds. The caller advised the sergeant that Hughes' live feed could be seen on Hughes' website, which he provided. At this point in the conversation concluded, and during the conversation, no mention was made that the landing was imminent. At 1:07 p.m., the U.S. Capitol Police Public Information Officer responded to this email by immediately forwarding it to the Investigations Division. Concurrently, the command center personnel went to the provided website, but did not find the live feed noted by the individual from the Tampa Bay Times. The command center notified the Investigations Division and the Public Information Officer. As the command center was attempting to validate any prohibited air flight information with USCP staff at the National Capital Region Coordination Center, the gyrocopter landed at approximately 1:23 p.m. At 1:21 p.m., just prior to the landing, an officer posted on the Pennsylvania Avenue walkway in the West Front was approached by a reporter who asked if he had seen a helicopter yet. The officer stated he had not seen a helicopter and then consulted with another officer to determine if they were aware of any prohibited airspace overflights. During this discussion, the officers observed the inbound gyrocopter over Union Square nearly atop the Grant Memorial. The officers immediately notified the Communications Center and subsequently reported the landing of the gyrocopter. This information was immediately broadcast over the radio for situational awareness and response. USCP officers immediately assessed the threat in accordance with department policy and training as USCP personnel quickly facilitated the movement of the public on the West Front away from the gyrocopter. Once the gyrocopter rotor stopped, USCP officers quickly approached the subject and took him into custody. The subject did not resist and was compliant with police direction. A K-9 unit immediately approached and swept the gyrocopter and showed interest in the area of the engine and fuel compartment, which was expected. Incident command was established at 1:26 p.m. The West Front was closed and vehicular traffic restricted on 1st Street between Constitution and Independence Avenues, along with Maryland and Pennsylvania Avenues to 3rd Street. As this was occurring, the Investigations Division provided the commanders in the command center with information about the subject from an internet video publicizing the subject's ownership of the gyrocopter, his intention to deliver a box of letters to Congress in reference to campaign finance reform, and his investigative history with both the USCP and the U.S. Secret Service. The command center notified the NCRCC of this situation. While the K-9 sweep was occurring, a Capitol Division commander directed a brief lockdown of the Capitol and of the CVC. When the lockdown was announced via the radio, the Uniformed Services Bureau commander, who was in the command center, consulted with the incident commander. USB commander then decided to lift the lockdown of the Capitol based on the following facts. The K-9 had not alerted to the body of the gyrocopter, but had shown interest only in the area of the engine and fuel compartment. The subject was in custody and compliant with directions. The size of the small package area of the gyrocopter was limited to 2 backpack-sized boxes. Information provided by the Investigations Division that the intent of the pilot was clearly expressed in his video, and the USCP had established a strong perimeter from the gyrocopter with distance from the Capitol. The exterior of the perimeter stayed in effect due to the extremely short time frame between the lockdown order and the direction to lift the lockdown, no messages were sent to the congressional community advising of the lockdown. The USCP Hazardous Devices section responded to this incident, and at 1:36 p.m. utilized a robot to investigate the gyrocopter. Since the robot could not access the two boxes in the gyrocopter at 2:21 p.m., the HDS section personnel donned protective gear and took X-rays of the boxes. The gyrocopter was determined to be clear of any hazards at 2:57 p.m. Traffic cuts were subsequently released, and the west front remained closed until the crime scene could be processed and the gyrocopter removed. It is important to note that while the USCP does not control prohibited airspace over Washington, D.C., we do monitor this airspace 24/7, and we are directly linked to other federal agencies related in this controlled airspace. On April 15th, this gyrocopter did not register on radar as a threat and therefore was not raised as a concern among our federal partners. We take the monitoring of prohibited airspace very seriously, which is why we have a designated airspace coordinator and have assigned liaisons at the NCRCC to provide immediate linkage to critical information regarding identified airspace threats. Information about identified airspace threats allows us to make informed decisions regarding the safety of our stakeholders, the congressional community, and the Capitol complex. Thank you again for the opportunity to discuss this event that occurred on Wednesday, April 15, 2015. I am very proud of the professional and immediate actions taken by members of the United States Capitol Police in addressing this incident. I would be happy to answer any questions the committee may have at this time.
Thank you. As previously announced, the committee is going to recess so that we can, members will be allowed to hear the Prime Minister of Japan as he addresses the joint session of Congress. We will reconvene approximately 30 minutes after the conclusion of that. We appreciate your patience. The committee is in recess.
Thank you. Yeah.
The committee will come to order. Thank you for your patience. I know you're all very busy. The chair would like to notify members, remind members that no subcommittee will start until the full committee is finished. So we do have a two subcommittees that are planned to meet at 2 o'clock. We also have votes that will happen on the floor in about 45 minutes. We'll try to do this as swiftly as possible, but I wanted to note that for members and those that might be showing up for the 2 o'clock hearing that is going to occur in this meeting. But let's address why we're here today, the gyrocopter incident that happened 2 weeks ago. The 9/11 Commission, after that terrible, horrific terrorist attack, wrote, quote, "The most important failure was one of imagination. We do not believe leaders understood the gravity of the threat," unquote. We're here today because we need to understand who saw what and when, who communicated what. Did it work? Did we learn those lessons of tragedies of past? On April 15th, a man in a gyrocopter was able to fly through the highly restricted airspace of the National Capital Region and land on the west lawn of the Capitol. He started off in the north, went over the Lincoln Memorial, right past into the airspace surrounding the White House, right past the Washington Memorial, and landed on the lawn of the Capitol. Unbelievable. He first told the federal authorities about this. It came on their radar about 2 years ago. And the National Capital Region is unique in that the Department of Defense, Transportation, and Homeland Security, along with the Capitol Police, National Park Police, and the Congressional Sergeant of Arms, all have roles to play in protecting the airspace. As best I can tell, in this region, there are roughly 32 law enforcement agencies that have some form of jurisdiction in the safety and security of the Washington, D.C. area. But it's still unclear who on this panel was ultimately responsible for first identifying this object, entering restricted airspace, and then for responding to it. At this point, ignorance is no longer an excuse when it comes to drones and small aircraft. In January, a drone crash landed on the White House lawn. It's becoming very common throughout the world. After the gyrocopter incident, a drone with radioactive material landed on the Japanese Prime Minister's residence. Dozens of unaccounted drones have flown over the streets of Paris since last October, and a drone crashed in front of the German Chancellor Merkel at a rally in 2013. There have been several instances involving the White House, including helicopters and small aircraft. And this is a pervasive threat. It's been there for a long time. It isn't going anywhere. And when we show this type of vulnerability, I worry that the shine, that it will inevitably be taken down and taken down hard, has gone away. Someone should have identified that this type of threat we aren't prepared to meet, or that our enemies would exploit. Our defensive technology must be able to prevent and respond to unconventional and emerging threats. We need to have that creativity to understand that the would-be terrorists and those people who want to see harm to the United States of America will likely be creative. But in this gyrocopter incident, he was loud and clear what he was going to do. In fact, he was live streaming it. And yet nobody seemed to pick that up. News outlets did. They sent staff, they sent reporters down the lawn to watch it. The United States military has researched drones since World War I, and for the last 13 years used them to fight against terrorists. Yet the primary drone detection technology currently used by the FAA, NORAD, the Secret Service, and the Capitol Police is roughly 70 years old. This antiquated technology can't even tell the difference between a bird, a drone, a gyrocopter, or just plain old weather. Even a Mylar balloon sets things off where people are hesitant to do anything because it might just be a good old-fashioned balloon. I understand we will hear today about the Pentagon's effort to improve our capability to identify and intercept small aerial threats. This is the same technology the Customs and Border Patrol has used in the border for years, long periods of time. They've been dealing with this type of gyrocopters and hang gliders and all sorts of these types of small aircraft on the borders for decades. They have been dealing with this for a long time. Did we ever learn any of those lessons? Do we need to bring CBP in here to help protect the capital region? They seem to figure it out. The stakes are high. Our interagency intelligence sharing and communications coordination can never, ever fail us. We must make sure all agencies with a role in the national security effectively communicate with each other. So hopefully we'll hear today how the agencies represented here have effectively communicated about threats and their counterparts. Quite frankly, I didn't learn much in your opening statements. That was as bland as we could possibly have been. We're here to address a serious topic. We're not going to just stand here and say, well, it's classified, we can't talk about it, because evidently when you have been talking about it, it hasn't gotten done. I, like other members of Congress and congressional staff and visitors to the Capitol, also have concerns about the communication breakdown and alerting the Capitol community about this incident. The first Capitol-wide alert came at 5:03 p.m., several hours after the incident was over. Well, I look forward to hearing about how the Sergeant of Arms and the Capitol Hill Police have updated their policies to prevent a breakdown like this from ever happening again. It certainly shouldn't have ever happened in the first place. It was very disappointing that three of the agencies here, the FAA, the Department of Defense, NORAD, and the Park Police, chose not to brief members of Congress last week. Now, I do appreciate Capitol Hill Police, the Sergeant of Arms, and the Secret Service for making themselves available. We had 4 agents, 4 committees, 4 committee chairmen, 4 ranking members ask for your presence to have a behind-the-scenes, closed-door briefing on this topic. And for whatever reason, the FAA, Department of Defense, and the Park Police refused to brief members of Congress. That doesn't give us a whole lot of confidence, folks. And we will yank you up here time and time again until we get answers in the public. We are different than the rest of the world. We are different. We're self-critical. Don't take it so personally. Understand, this is how we make America the greatest country on the face of the planet. We do this in an open and transparent way. But when you won't even talk to members in a closed-door meeting, that's not acceptable. It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of the other people's time. And we need results. Because we had some yahoo in a gyrocopter land right over there. And it didn't work. And I got these opening statements from you that shed no light other than a timeline and how big a space the Park Police protects. It didn't work. We need candor. I want to, again, thank Director Clancy, Chief Dine, and Mr. Irving for their responsiveness to requests. I can tell you we've had a lot of interactions with the Secret Service that haven't been the most pleasant, but I will thank that agency for being so accessible in their communications, and particularly Mr. Clancy, who's made himself available on the mobile phone and calling us and making sure that he's available here. And I want to publicly thank him for that, even though we have had our differences. We understand that the mission is difficult to fulfill, but you're here today because you've been entrusted to accomplish it. We want to help that. We're in the middle of our appropriation season. We can't ever have this mission fail. So we look forward to hearing more about that. With that, I will now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cummings, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Unlike previous hearings, our committee has held with the Secret Service and the DEA, which involved misconduct by individual agents. Today's hearing presents a different question. How should our nation deal with the relatively new and evolving threat of unmanned or small manned aerial vehicles entering the airspace over our nation's capital? This is a question of technology and policy, both of which are rapidly evolving. In this case, I do not personally believe the answer is to condemn the Capitol Police for not shooting down the gyrocopter. I also do not believe we should rush to criticize federal agencies charged with responding to this threat. Instead, I believe the best course of action is to work collaboratively with both the Capitol Police and these federal agencies to understand the threat, understand it, and to strongly support their ongoing efforts to enhance current technologies, many of which are classified. So I thank the Chairman for calling today's hearing on this very critical issue. I completely understand the frustration expressed by the Chairman and others about this incident. And let me be clear, I share the frustration. I said in a meeting the other day, so often what happens is that we have a tendency to tell each other that everything will be fine when the rubber meets the road. And then when it comes time for the rubber to meet the road, we discover there is no road. The airspace around our nation's capital is supposed to be the most restricted in the world. Yet a postal worker, a postal worker from Florida was able to fly his gyrocopter through 30 miles of restricted airspace before finally landing on Capitol lawn. In this case, the individual was only trying to make a peaceful demonstration. But we might not be so fortunate in the future. It takes almost no effort to imagine what could have been. What if he had weapons? What if he were carrying a bomb? On the flip side, it is also my understanding that, based in part on classified briefings we've received, that this individual is incredibly lucky to be alive today. The next person who tries something this stupid, and it was stupid, may not be so lucky. I'd like to thank all of the witnesses for testifying here today on such short notice. I also want to thank you for providing briefings last week, both classified and unclassified. Your missions are extremely difficult, and the lives of people throughout the district depend on your success. I look forward to hearing from each of you in an effort to address this very pressing situation. We all agree that our paramount interest in the continued security of the airspace over the Capitol and addressing any possible breaches as effectively and efficiently as possible. That's what we're aiming at. This is a critical moment, gentlemen, a very critical moment. By the way, it's wake-up call time. We live in a dangerous world with complex, constantly evolving threats, so it's imperative that we are prepared to counter them. In addressing these questions today, however, the last thing we want to do, the last thing, is give a roadmap to those who want to harm us. I hope that you all agree on that. Don't want to do anything that counters what you do every day, and that is trying to protect us. So obviously we need to treat this information responsibly, and we do not want to highlight security vulnerabilities to would-be attackers, because you can guarantee your bottom dollar they're watching. Out of an abundance of caution, I want to make 100% sure that all of our witnesses understand that we do not want you to discuss any sensitive information in this public forum. I think all of you know what I mean by sensitive. And if you don't know, you raise your hand now and let me know, and we'll try to make sure you're clear what we're talking about. And I'm not trying to be smart either. Many of you have raised concerns about holding a public hearing on this topic. And I understand your concerns. The chairman understands your concerns. Our committee understands. After discussions with the chairman and his staff, and I want to thank him for this, we have agreed to set up a separate, cleared room to address any sensitive issues that may arise. The bottom line is that you are the experts, and we will defer to you on what can be discussed in this public setting. If our questions call for sensitive information, please let us know, and we can reconvene in the closed setting to address those issues. Our sole purpose today is to help you counter the threats we face, not to expose our nation's capital to greater danger by exposing operational details or security vulnerabilities. Now, let me go back to something that the chairman said, and I wholeheartedly agree with him on this. Gentlemen, time is of the essence. Time is of the essence. And I have not come here to ask you. I've come here to beg you to do whatever you have to do to get the technology, if we don't have it, to speed up the technology if it's in the process, to more effectively and efficiently allow you to do the jobs that you are sworn to do. And I want to take this moment again to thank all the people who work with you. There are people who have come out there every day trying to make sure that we're safe. And I want to publicly thank them on behalf of all of us for what they do every day. And I want them to understand, and I know that the chairman agrees with me on this, although there may be criticism, it's about the better, moving to a more effective and efficient system of protection for all of us. And so one of the best ways to do that, of course, is to make sure we have effective oversight. And again, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for calling the hearing, and with that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I'll now recognize myself for 5 minutes. And it starts with a simple question of who's in charge. You've got a dude in a gyrocopter 100 feet in the air crossing 30-plus miles of restricted airspace. Whose job is it to detect him, and whose job is it to take him down?
Sir, as the commander of NORAD, that's my responsibility, and I'm accountable for that.
Why didn't it happen?
Because we're working against physics, sir. Our system is designed to detect, track, identify. We have a decision-making process to decide what to do, and then we engage. And that system is netted sensors, radars, cameras, and other capabilities that are out there. And we employ that system to the best of our ability, mitigate the risk as the best of our ability, but it's only capable down to a particular set of characteristics that the platform that we want to track and defend against is emitting. based on speed and based on size. And I can go into further details in the classified section.
Your spokesperson for Michael Kucharik, in an article dated April 16th in the Baltimore Sun, you had launched some balloons at the Aberdeen, the Aberdeen Proving Ground. It's called the Joint Land Attack Cruise Missile Defense Elevated Netted Sensor System, otherwise known as JLENS, was designed to help officials, quote, spot low-flying, slow-moving targets. Was it working? Was it operational?
It's not operational, sir. We put it up in Aberdeen to test it. It's in testing today. It's not netted into our system. And in the investigation, we're going to find out, while it's in its test mode, was it able to detect that particular traffic?
It wasn't operational on that day. You weren't testing at that time.
It's not operational. It's in a test process right now. We're using it as a test platform, and it is not integrated into our system. Should it prove to be effective, our choice is to put it into our system and make it operational, but it's not operational today.
U.S. Customs and Border Patrol uses the Tethered Aerostat Radar System, or TARS. Why aren't you using that?
That's why we think JLENS has more promise, and the reason we think JLENS has more promise than that is I'll have to defer to the next session, sir.
Who, once you detect something, whose job and role and responsibility is to take it down?
Secretary of Defense, Deputy Secretary of Defense, and if they're not there, it's my decision or to my deputies.
Whose decision is it if they see something visually at the Capitol Hill Police? Chief Dine?
Mr. Chairman, as officers do every day, if they see something that is a threat to them or anyone else.
When did they see it?
They saw it seconds before it landed as it was above the statue at Grand Circle.
And did they, what was the decision-making tree at that point?
They go through their training in terms of our threat and use of force training, and I believe they, in this instance, made the appropriate decision based on the manner in which it landed, the compliance of the pilot, and the distance from the building.
So we did have guns trained on it. They decided not to fire.
They made an instantaneous decision to do what they did and quickly arrest him, apprehend him.
As opposed to shooting it out.
Yes, sir.
You say in your written statement that the caller from the Tampa Bay Times, presumably here, advised the sergeant that Hughes's live feed could be seen on Hughes's website, which he provided. You later said, but it did not find the live feed noted by the individuals from the Tampa Bay Times. Why weren't you able to see it when so many others were? I mean, we had news organizations who were sending their reporters down there because they were watching it.
Yes, sir. Clearly, the media knew about this ahead of time. When we got those that call and that one email, we immediately began to investigate, and minutes later, he landed.
You told me last week personally that you would provide to me that email, yet we have not been provided that email. Will you provide this committee that email?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
We have also asked to meet with the individuals who, I'd like this committee, certainly myself, the ranking member, the House administration, Candace Miller and her ranking member, to meet with the people who had their guns up ready to fire. Will you make those people available to us?
Absolutely. We can work through the United States Attorney's Office. Obviously, as you know, this case is under prosecution.
Well, Chairman, just for a second, when will we get the email that the Chairman just asked you about? When will we get that? I thought we'd have that by now.
I can provide it to you immediately.
That means right after this hearing?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Last question before I turn it over to the ranking member. You say in your written statement, Chief Dine, that due to the extremely short time frame between the lockdown order and the direction to lift the lockdown, no messages were sent to the congressional community advising the lockdown. The gyrocopter landed at 1:23 p.m. You say later in your testimony the gyrocopter was determined to be clear of any hazards at 2:57 p.m., and yet it was 5:03 p.m. before any notice went out. Why did it take so long?
We have, you're absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman. We have immediately fixed that. The next day I gave a directive to our people to put out messages to the entire community that affect the community. What no one got was a lockdown message. We did send some messages out to the Senate community based on their direction, but that matter's been fixed. We had a overly complex notification system, and we have immediately fixed that, and that will not happen again.
And to the Sergeant of Arms, Mr. Irving, welcome back. I know you've had some duties there with the Prime Minister, but why didn't we get notification that there was a potential threat?
There was a mix-up in the command center, lack of communication between my staff and the Capitol Police command staff. That will not happen again, as the chief said. We have fixed that, so we vowed that.
I mean, there's the same people in the same. They're in the same room, correct?
It is correct. They're all in the same room, and the notification should have gone out. It was an error. In most cases, the notifications do go out. We had incident the prior weekend. They were flawless. In this case, they were not, and we assure you that it will not happen again.
Thank you. I'll now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chief Dine, I want to ask you about the Capitol Police and your current policies on when to use lethal force. The chairman and others have suggested that you should have shot down the gyrocopter, but others disagree, and you seem to disagree. This incident was not the first time the Capitol Police have had to make a life or death judgment call in a matter of seconds. In 1998, a deranged individual burst through the doors of the Capitol and shot and killed 2 Capitol Police officers. That was a tragic event, and I'm certain that it is on the minds of every single Capitol Police officer who stands guard outside these doors. Chief Dines, do you believe that the shooting in 1998 influenced how the Capitol Police handle threats of this nature today and when this incident happened?
Yes, sir. In fact, every threat that this agency and other agencies face ends up influencing the history of that agency and the policies that they put in place.
Well, can you please tell us what impact, if any, does that shooting in 1998 have on the policies used by the police, Capitol Police today? I mean, how did that affect it?
We changed our security posture, and of course, I'd be glad to discuss that more in closed session, but we drastically changed our security posture throughout the Capitol in terms of methods and staffing. In this instance that we're talking about today, obviously, as in any instance where an officer has to make a split-second decision to use force or not to save their lives or others' lives, that's what officers are up against every day. And in this particular instance, given all of the ramifications, some of which we discussed in closed session last week, I think they made the appropriate decision. But that's a challenge that officers face every single day, whether it's on one of their checkpoints, during a traffic stop, when they're stopping people around the campus, et cetera.
Without going into any classified information, tell me this. Did this incident that we're talking about today, has that caused you all to change anything about your policies with regard to shoot downs, lethal force?
We have not changed anything yet, but it has caused us, like those other seminal moments that you referenced, to re-examine how we do business.
Now, about 2 years ago, in 2013, there was another incident. A woman drove onto the Capitol grounds, fleeing law enforcement, and the Capitol Police shot and killed her. We learned later that the woman was mentally ill and that she was not armed and that she had a 1-year-old baby in the back seat of a car. Is that right, Chief Dine?
Yes, sir.
Now, while some praise the response of the Capitol Police, others criticize. And Chief Dine, what impact, if any, did this incident, that is, this incident that I just talked about, have on your policies for using legal force?
Ranking Member Cummings, as you know, that matter is under litigation, but I can tell you every time we face one of these instances, it causes us to examine and re-examine how we do business. And the fact of the matter is, during every one of these instances, it's that police officer on the street that has literally seconds to make a decision about whether their life is in danger or someone else's is in danger, and they do their best to make that the best judgment at that time.
Now, it seems clear that in both cases, the officers had to respond almost instantly, as you said, life or death decisions. With respect to the gyrocopter incident earlier this month, some have suggested that the Capitol Police made a mistake by not shooting him out of the air. Keeping in mind that this is a public session, can you tell us generally what steps the Capitol Police took with respect to using lethal force against the gyrocopter pilot?
Yes, sir. Based on the circumstances of that day, literally seconds, having seen it, having observed it land, the manner in which it landed, the geography from the United States Capitol, the compliance of the pilot, and all of those kinds of things, as well as we discussed in closed session, the ramifications which officers have to take into consideration as well when they're considering using lethal force, and the ramifications of that force and the impact it may have on others. All of those decisions are processed literally in a matter of seconds, and that's what happened in this case. And I believe their actions were heroic. They quickly approached, arrested the individual. We screened the vehicle as well, canine-wise, and then used additional capabilities after that to make sure everybody was safe.
Just out of curiosity, is there simulation for these types of incidents in the training?
Well, frankly, that's something that we're all examining because when airborne vehicles reach the point where they become a law enforcement issue versus a DOD issue, that's a phenomenon that we're all examining.
So you're saying you didn't answer my question. It's not a part of simulation right now. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
We have the capability to do what we need to do and take any vehicle down. And I don't know that historically police agencies have practiced shooting at aircrafts, but that's something that is clearly under. But I want to make it clear we have the capabilities to do what we need to do. I do want to make that clear to the committee.
Just two more questions. There seems to be a suggestion that the Capitol Police should have just shot him down. Without disclosing any sensitive information, can you tell us whether the Capitol Police had an opportunity to take down the gyrocopter, and if so, why they didn't?
Well, I would say in this instance, the answer is no, based on again the manner in which it landed.
You're saying no to what?
No, sir. They did not literally have the ability to do it based on the height and its proximity to other people, and all of the ramifications and how quickly it landed, and then based on the whole decision-making matrix that I mentioned. But there's often a split second or so where an officer has to make that decision.
And last but not least, why do you say that the Capitol Police officers made the right decision? You reiterated that over and over and over again, and I just want to know why you feel so sure about that.
Because they in this instance, and each instance is unique when a police officer faces those kinds of challenges. Each and every one is totally unique with a unique set of circumstances. But in this one, giving the timing, giving the lack of information about any credible threat, given all of the ramifications that may have taken place, had shots been fired, I believe they acted quickly, bravely, and heroically.
Before the gentleman yields back, I got to ask you a question. I've asked you directly in closed doors and in here whether or not you had somebody with a gun trained on these people who could take them out of the air. And yet when Mr. Cummings asked that same question in a different way, you say no. You told me yes. What is it?
We clearly have officers out there with weaponry that are
in this instance with the gyrocopter coming at the Capitol. Did you? And it may have been brief. I understand you didn't get much advance warning.
Right.
But did you or did you not have guns trained on this gyrocopter to take him out of the air if he had continued to fly on?
Had they trained guns on him?
No. Did they have guns on him in this instance?
As he was landing. Yes, sir.
So he was in the air.
As he landed. I would say as he landed.
This is why we got to talk to the people who are actually.
Yeah. Just one, reclaiming my time just very quickly. How far was he from the ground? Picking up on where the chairman left off, how far was he from the ground, if you know, when you had an opportunity, when the Capitol Police had an opportunity to shoot him down?
I believe the officer first saw him when he was right above Grand Statue, which was literally right atop Grand Statue, which is seconds from when he landed.
Very well. I yield back.
We need further clarification of that. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Micah, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, for holding this meeting. What we've experienced just with this incident is, again, another horrible communications failure of the system. And this isn't new. The Ranking Member just cited back in October of 2013, we had the deranged individual, a woman, who actually backed into someone at the White House, came across the entire distance of downtown metropolitan D.C., went through the barriers, and the communications failed. Chief Dine, I wrote you on October 8th, right after that. I said, we all appreciate and commend your actions. I'm contacting you to request your response about concerns were highlighted in this tragic act. Number one, it's my understanding the Secret Service, Capitol Police, Park Service, and District of Columbia Police and other agencies have interoperable communications. You know, when I raised this, there are other things here. We spent $250 million when we did the Capitol Visitor Center in redoing ballards and all of the things after 9/11, and that failed. Those communication systems failed. Now they failed again. I'm stunned. This is how we get a warning. Okay, this device still has not gone off to this instance. My office is right down the hall here. I overlook. My desk faces out so I could look at the Capitol lawn. I'm sitting there at 1:20 watching what's coming down. And I'm on the phone and I look and there's a police vehicle, not on the road, not on the path, but coming up the grass. There's another officer with a pretty powerful weapon. I've got pictures of it. We snapped some of the pictures of it. And I said to the staff, I don't know what's going on, but something's coming down. Well, nothing. We never heard a thing. This is the first communication that I got. Let me get the exact communication. The date here. I think it was actually it wasn't until 5:02. There was no notification. This is a message from the Sergeant at Arms. The Capitol have cleared the police activity. We never knew what was coming down. Now, granted, a week before, on Saturday, the 11th, we had incredible notice. It was Saturday. Were you here, Mr. Chairman? No. Was anyone here? I mean, no one was here. It was a serious situation. Someone ended up, we found out, committed suicide. It worked very well. This thing went crazy. My annunciator went crazy. I got lots of notice. But it's working some of the time, not all of the time. Isn't that right, Chief Dine?
It now will work all the time, sir, and your point is well taken.
Well, again, and I don't think I got a response from you. I asked the staff, where's my letter to Dine from the last incident? That was, a lot of people around here wanted to sweep this under the table. It was an embarrassing situation. But it can't happen again. Mr. Herta, FAA, a gyrocopter can lift how many pounds?
A small gyrocopter of this sort.
254 pounds, right?
Its weight is was about.
But it can
50
lift,
pounds.
I think, that much. That's part of it falls into a category. So you can have a 200-pound individual, right, flying it, we'll say?
Yes.
So what capacity does that leave? 50 pounds?
It's
50
a very
pounds.
small capacity.
Mr. Clancy, no one knew what was on that helicopter. You guys didn't know. Did anyone know what was on the helicopter? Yes. I mean, we were told some time ago, but nobody connects the dots. But we didn't know whether it was letters to the congressman or we didn't know whether it was, in fact, 50 pounds of plastic explosive. Clancy, Mr. Clancy, what would 50 pounds of plastic explosive do to the Capitol building? It would be
Devastating.
Devastating. So nobody knew. Wait a second, too. I just heard today you said the FAA domestic network was notified. What time? It went up on the FAA domestic network. Who knows when that is, Herta or Clancy?
About 1:34 in the afternoon.
That was afterwards.
After it landed.
After it landed.
Correct.
So there's something wrong there on the domestic FAA notice. There's something wrong with the notice with the Capitol Police. 123, you had the guy under arrest. We never knew. I mean, I'm not afraid. I've been here through 9/11. If they want to take me out, take me out. Give me a chance, give our staff a chance, give us notice. Make this thing work, okay? Again, I don't think it's too much to ask that we get this thing right. And there's a lot at stake, not just saving members of Congress. We've got new threats, and I brought up the drone before the drone landed on the White House. The White House, they still don't have, we had another jumper, didn't we, Mr. Clancy, just recently?
Yes, sir, we did have
Yeah, how long before we get the fence increase? I told you I got the name of a great welder. He's welded my fence in Florida. I'll get him up here. I've got the name of ADT. We can get them in here to put in systems, but we still don't have the fence secure there, do we?
Sir,
It's not heightened. You can still jump over the fence.
That's
how
correct.
long?
Sir, in the summer, it will be, the attachment will be attached this summer.
Okay. Yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, this letter has to be in the record at this point. This is my letter to Chief Dine from some time ago.
Ask unanimous
Also,
consent to do that without objection to order.
If you put the only email I got at 5 o'clock after it was all over. And then, oh, one more thing. Would you yield just a second for the benefit of members? I sent you back, and I was told afterwards, the staff said you didn't get. I have searched my messages to see if an alert was sent out on this incident. Was one sent, Congressman John Mica? The staff told me we can't respond to you, that you only send these alerts out. So I sent this out the same day after the day after the incident, finding out if anything had been sent, and I missed it. But there's no way for us to contact you. We need a way to contact you. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. Oh, we're going to recognize, I guess, the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, first for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is an important hearing. You can't have an incident like this and not have a hearing, and I know that witnesses understand this. I certainly appreciate the work they do, and I think essentially, gentlemen, the problem you are facing is getting ahead of risks and threats that may be unbelievable. But that is what the Congress, and for that matter, the public expects you to do. I mean, we are fortunate that that gyrocopter didn't have a chemical or an explosive in it, and of course, we know that you knew it did not, and we know, and this is why I have a question first for Mr. Herter. I believe we know that it was not possible for existing technology that keeps the violation of an airspace, that we can go, we can catch a helicopter, we can catch a small plane, but technically, do we have the technology to capture wigamadoos that fly below that airspace that is more typical?
Congresswoman Norton, the FAA's, what the FAA provides to the surveillance capability is radar feeds, and radar that the FAA uses for our purposes to separate air traffic is filtered to ensure that a controller is able to safely separate traffic transiting the region's airports and the region's airspace. This very small aircraft flying through is not something that a controller would ordinarily pick up in the course of carrying out their aircraft separation activities.
So you see, I'm not going to ask law enforcement on the ground to do the impossible, but I am going to ask law enforcement on the ground to tell us ahead of time what the impossible is. I mean, we're asking you to do Star Wars type thinking about who could fly like you fly a kite. and if we don't think about it, we know who will be thinking about it. So I am interested in separating out what is technically possible and what is technically not possible. Now I want to know, Mr. Herter, why Congress hasn't been asked for the capability to fly below that usual airspace, where, by the way, if anybody gets into that airspace, we send National Guard planes up in the air right away, instantly. If we don't have the ability to do something tantamount to that, then the only people who really know it, who can get ahead of the game for us, are those of you who are on the ground who don't have that capability, and who therefore have to think about risks that only law enforcement, frankly, has the capability to envision. And I want to know why the Congress hasn't been asked for that, for the means to provide that capability.
Congresswoman Norton, what I was referring to is the FAA's surveillance capability that is provided to this whole government effort, but that it is not, the entire government surveillance network is not limited to that, and I would defer to my colleagues from DOD.
Ma'am, I'm prepared to answer that question for you, the investments that Congress has made, but I need to do that in a closed session.
Thank you. It would be very important for Congress to know, can we do it? To say to people on the ground, can't do it, even you see, if, as Chief Dine says, if you see it in a few seconds, take it down. That's not what happens if I try to fly a helicopter into the airspace. So it seems I want to give you the same capability, the same time that those who have tried to pierce our airspace have found they just can't do it. So we don't see you having to shoot down much up there because you have the technology to do it. And in closed session, we need to know that, and we need to know it now. And one of the reasons we need to know it now is the first thing I find that officials do when they don't have the capability is they keep the public out. They close. They say, we know how to make sure nobody gets hurt, nobody gets in. And I'm not accusing you of doing that, but I have to tell you it has been often the first reflex. We seem to work on a case-by-case basis. Now we know probably that Chief Dine's, that our police officers, because he said they saw it only a few seconds and then they had to get themselves together. But the case-by-case way to go at security assures us that there will be a terrible thing to happen, and then we will take care of it. So what I am trying to find out is if there is if we can get the capabilities before you have the obligation, even, to do something about it, because it hasn't occurred yet. And I would be interested in that in closed session. But I am interested in closing down the Capitol. When anthrax occurred, the first thing I had to go on the House floor and literally embarrass the police to get the Capitol open. It was closed for months because the Capitol Police couldn't think of a way to keep it open. It was terrible to have the Capitol itself closed. And I want to make sure, I have seen no evidence that the Capitol is being closed and those grounds are being closed, and I want assurance that that is not taking place.
Thank the gentlewoman. Does anybody care to comment on that?
Could I have an answer at least? Can people
Mr.
still
Irving,
go?
Mr.
Can people still go where they were able to go before Chief Dine?
Yes, ma'am. Capitol is open at this right now.
Thank you very much.
Recognize the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Walberg, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the panel for being here. And I think we all understand you have to be right all the time. They have to be right once. And so we appreciate the fact of what you deal with. However, I just have a relative few questions that could be asked without going into some closed session. But first of all, to Director Clancy, I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around the fact that the Secret Service had a recognition of this gentleman and his intentions to fly here and to land, as I understand it, on the Capitol. Sometime before, in 2014, in fact, early 2014, that Secret Service interviewed Mr. Hughes, based upon some information he was putting out back in August, September, and October of 2013. So with that in mind, with that lead up to it, plus The day of the flight, there was also phone calls made from the Tampa newspaper to Secret Service. My question is, did the Secret Service share all the information that it should have with other relevant law enforcement agencies with responsibility for the D.C. airspace?
Yes, Congressman. On October 4th, our Denver field office did get a call from an individual who knew of Mr. Hughes' plan. This is October of 2013. We relayed that information to our partners at Capitol Police, and that day we also, the following day, we went and interviewed that individual to get more details. As we got more details, we realized that Mr. Hughes, the subject here, lived in Tampa Bay. We sent our Tampa Bay office agents down there to interview him. He denied any interest in any of our protectees, denied any interest in the White House, and denied he had no indication that he would be flying up into the Washington, D.C. area. We did do additional interviews with additional associates who corroborated the first call that we received in Denver that he did have some aspirations to do this. But again, there is no indication that any of our protectees or any of our facilities, protective facilities, were that he had the intent to do this. But we did share the information.
But you shared it with them. Chief Dine, you had that information back in early 2014 that there was an individual of interest, at least, that had some idea to fly and bring letters to Congress in a very unusual way?
Yes, sir. The Secret Service shared that information with us, and yes, sir.
What did Capitol Police know about Mr. Hughes and his intentions prior to him landing on the Capitol grounds subsequent to getting this information? What else came through that should have highlighted something happening?
Subsequent to us, that being case essentially closed or suspended by us and the Secret Service, nothing up until minutes before he landed. As I had mentioned earlier, we got a fairly cryptic email and a phone call that was not date or time specific, talking about whether or not were we aware of this and whether or not he had a permit. That was literally minutes before he landed.
But April 15th, as I'm seeing a timeline here, an individual made a call to Secret Service's Tampa field office to warn of Hughes' plan. Was that information shared with you?
Sir, on October 15th, we received a call from an individual who did not give any time or date or specifics.
This was April 15th that I have here.
April 15th, yes, sir.
Okay.
Just an individual had called our Tampa Bay office and asked specifically for a specific agent. And we said the agent is no longer assigned to the office, and this individual said, well, just let him know I called. And there was no specifics to Mr. Hughes or to this flight.
Okay, so the Tampa Bay Times then reporter calls Secret Service on April 15th at 1 o'clock.
That's correct, sir.
He landed at 1:23, so we've got 23 minutes still. Was there any notification? Let me ask Chief McLean to join in here as well. Was there any notification of all the entities that someone indeed is starting this flight, is on his way? He's live streaming it. He may be coming over your territory. Is there any action that can be taken, even with the Park Service, in stopping someone flying low?
To answer the first part of the question, the United States Park Police did not have any actionable information. Let me correct that. No information regarding Mr. Hughes coming to this area prior to our officer patrolling, witnessing the aircraft.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess leaves me with great concern that when information is given, crackpot or otherwise, and then the day of the event takes place, we have information that is given, and still this person is able to make it all those miles, and more importantly, across the restricted airspace, coming across our monument area, coming across, leading up to our Capitol itself, and then lands, and nothing happens until this person is on the ground. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the ranking member. This is not good. I mean, this is on top of a lot of other incidents that we've been talking about at the White House as well. You know, I get the feeling that just as before 9/11, if you visited an airport in the United States, we had very little security going on. Yet, if you visited Ben Gurion Airport or Leonardo da Vinci Airport or Heathrow, those countries had dealt with terrorism before us, and they were all tooled up. They were ready. They had heavy weapons. They had metal detectors, and yet we were lulled into a false sense of security. I get the sense that we're behind the curve again. You know, you visit, you know, any of these, the committee's involved in hardening our facilities overseas, and you go into any major capital in Europe or the Middle East or Africa, and they're taking precautions that we are not. And I know there's a balance between public access and security, but we have gotten to the point where I am worried about the president. I'm worried about his family. I'm worried about the security on the grounds here at the Capitol. I'm worried about the Supreme Court across the street. And I just have to say that, you know, we had advance notice, albeit you had to connect the dots and you had to talk to each other. This was not good. That a fellow's able to fly in here and land you know, a gyrocopter on the lawn. It's not good. And I know we got a bunch of reasons why it happened, and it seems like we got some excuses, but that's just not good enough. And I have a lot of respect for the panel individually, and I don't know if it's a lack of communication between departments, but we got to do better. Dear God, we got to do better. Is there anything that we've done since this guy landed the gyrocopter on the lawn? Is there anything that we've done that we would do differently if that were to happen today and someone with nefarious intent, a terrorist, were to do the same damn thing? Anybody? Okay, so we're doing basically the same thing that we were doing when this guy did his thing. We need change. We need change. And I don't know, you know, Mr. Clancy, I got enormous respect for you and the job that you do. I really do. But can you tell me what you need to make the White House safe, the Capitol safe, the Supreme Court safe, with respect to the airspace that you're charged to guard?
Yes, sir. Before I address that, I would just like to say in this particular incident, we believe in this is a team effort, certainly among the members here on the panel, but certainly among the American people too. And the Department of Homeland Security has this initiative for See Something, Say Something, and we feel very strongly and that Americans need to...
But people said something. People said something. A few people said something. And we all saw something. But, and some of your colleagues saw things, or their employees saw things, and this still went forward, right to the door of the Capitol. That's what gets me. And there are a lot of the public that were, you know, exposed to potential danger. So, you know, people bringing their families here. So it's not just, you know, self-preservation here among members of Congress. We're worried about the general public as well.
Yes, sir, and you're exactly right, sir. And I think if the, for example, the Tampa Bay Times had informed us prior to departure of this aircraft, we could have had a response team at Gettysburg, or law enforcement would have. Or if we were notified a day in advance, days in advance, we could have had law enforcement down in Florida. So I think that's part of that team effort. But in terms of your second question, sir, I'm sorry.
Well, look, if your officers are on the ground, or your agents are on the ground, and they see, what are the orders, just at a very basic level, what are the orders for a Capitol Police officer or a Secret Service agent if there's an object flying towards the Capitol? Are we still stand and watch? Are we still passive, or do we actually, are they under orders to do something?
Sir, for the Secret Service, I'll just say that first it's communication, and then we take a defensive posture. Our initial, we rely on the radar that we see and the communication to take a defensive posture if we need to move any of our protectees or any of the guests by our protective facilities. So that's our first move, cover and evacuate.
That doesn't work very well with a suicide bomber or something like that, though. You know, you obviously, you shelter in place to the degree you can, but
yes, sir.
I don't know. I just think maybe we got to talk about this more in a classified briefing. But this cannot stand. I yield back.
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yield. Thank you very much. I got to ask you this. This is getting to be very painful. Ms. Clancy, you said that it is a team effort. I agree. But the gentleman just asked a question, and the silence was chilling. He asked the question, and I'm talking to all of you now. Are we doing, and you can, I just, if it's classified information, tell us and we'll deal with it, but I do need to know a yes or no. Have we done things now that put us in a better position than when where we were on the day of this offense? And I don't want silence. It's not good enough.
Sir, the answer is yes, and I'd be glad to discuss that in closed session.
And has that been a team effort?
Yes, sir.
Very well. Thank you.
Now I recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Meadows, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let me pick up on this team environment. Prior to this incident, how many times have all of you met as an agency to discuss new technology that may be a threat to the Capitol or the White House or to other assets? How many times have you all met together prior to this incident to discuss that?
Sir, Congressman, if I can take that individually, I can't say that we've all met frequently at all, but there is a lot of work being done among the federal departments.
Okay, so it's not frequent. So how often? How many times have you done it? Where all of you have gotten together, you're the team. Right. You talk about the team. Now, we know a lot about teams. The Bad News Bears were a team, too, and they didn't do real well.
But Congressman, if I could, our staffs work together.
So have your staffs all been in a room to discuss that prior to this incident? And if so, how many times?
Sir, so first of all...
do you know how many times?
Yes, sir. There's twice a month meetings with our staff.
To discuss the technology and what is different.
Yes, sir. And if I could, I'd like to just take a little... what has been going on, Congressman, is there is a national effort. The National Security Staff has been leading an effort over the last year to look at UAVs in particular, what we refer to as non-traditional aircraft, whether they're gyrocopters, UAVs, or
so you just haven't come up with an answer?
No, sir. I want to.
Well, we can put a man on the moon. We can fly a rover to Mars. Can't we figure out how to stop a postal worker with a gyrocopter coming into the grounds?
Sir, the work that's being done between the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Defense, the Department of Transportation, and recently the National Science and Technology Council fast-tracked looking at technologies that could help. Again...
So when will we have a plan? Admiral, when will we have a plan? You said you're the guy in charge. When will we have a plan to make sure that this doesn't happen in case there is 50 pounds of plastic explosives?
Sir, when we go to closed session, I'll show you what we have, what we're testing, and when we're...
I'm not asking what the plan is. I said, when will we have it?
Sir, I need to do that in a closed session.
All right, so let me ask you a different question because the silence is deafening. So if you get together twice a month, your staff, how many times have most of you or all of you gotten together to discuss your responses to this hearing? Did you meet as a group to discuss your responses to this hearing?
Yes, sir, we did yesterday.
So what you're saying is you all got together to discuss your response to this hearing, but yet you all don't get together necessarily individually, your staffs do, to discuss the protection of assets here.
Congressman, we also...
Yes or no?
No, sir, we do at the White House. We have deputy-level meetings. And
So all of you got together to discuss your responses to this hearing? When did you do that?
yesterday, sir.
Why would you do that? If you were just wanting to be transparent, why would you try to coordinate your answers to this hearing? Are you more afraid of government oversight than you are in protecting the people?
No, sir, we're not.
So why would you have gotten together to discuss your responses if they were individual responses there?
To talk about some of the lessons we learned, sir.
Talk about the lessons before you testify?
Well,
Is that what you were doing?
No, sir.
Preparing your testimony?
No, sir. We were talking.
So none of you prepared your testimony. Mr. Clancy, is that your sworn testimony today, that you didn't talk about how you would testify before this hearing?
So we did talk about what we could talk about in an open hearing as opposed to a closed hearing, and we wanted to make sure.
So was there any strategy to those discussions on what you would say and what you wouldn't say in terms of how you would look, Mr. Clancy, before this hearing?
Sir, the discussion was, again, what was could be talked about in an open hearing and what could not be talked about in an open hearing.
Well, my understanding is that it was a lot more strategic than that. Am I wrong, Mr. Huerta? You and I have a good relationship, an honest relationship. Was that discussed in terms of what you would say and what you would not say in terms of response to questions?
No, it was not.
All right, so what was discussed?
I think, as you've heard from these other two gentlemen, it was simply a discussion of what could be said in open versus...
Yeah, what I find very concerning, Mr. Chairman, what I find very concerning is all of you are willing to get together to discuss your testimony before coming here to be honest, and yet the American people expect just honesty, and yet what we have is a coordinated effort to be a stone wall. That's concerning, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. And I need to add, and I said it in my opening, when we asked you all to come privately brief 4 committees of Congress, more than half of you said no. I don't understand that. I really don't understand that. You can sit here in public testimony and say we're doing everything we can. This is the way our system works. It's inexcusable to me that you would refuse to come to Congress a week after the attack and give us a brief. 3 of you did, but 4 of you didn't. And that's why you get questions like that, because the time you did get together, nobody was in the room. Sounds like you all coordinated on how to message this, and you spent more time doing that than you did briefing Congress, being candid with us. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Cartwright, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank also my colleague from Massachusetts, and I wish to associate myself with his remarks when he talked about that this is not a question of self-preservation for members of Congress. We think about not only ourselves, we think about the people who come to visit us from our districts, we think about the young people who help enable us to do the work that we do. You know, we're talking about thousands and thousands of young people, interns and fellows and employees on Capitol Hill here, and we feel responsible to them and their families and their parents to keep them safe. All of these people are within the Special Flight Rules area, the SFRA that you've discussed. They're all within the National Capital Region flight area that you've been talking about. And more than that, the visitors who come and visit our national memorials, the World War II Memorial, the Jefferson Memorial. We just had the National Cherry Blossom Festival a couple of weeks ago. There had to be well over 100,000 Americans visiting. All of those areas in the Tidal Basin are within the Special Flight Rules area, are they not? That is correct. An area that was traversed by this knucklehead with a gyrocopter who could easily have been a terrorist. And so we take it seriously, a hearing like this. It isn't about ourselves, it's about all of the huge number of Americans who are in the Special Flight Rules area and the National Capital Region. And it's not just about gyrocopters either. It's about drones as well. We've heard a lot in the past months about drones and the threat they could cause to our national security. You know, Admiral Gortney, your testimony was you said this: what we now understand is that the gyrocopter was detected by several of the integrated sensors as it approached and transited through the SFRA, the Special Flight Rules Area. However, the aircraft's flight parameters fell below the threshold necessary to differentiate aircraft from weather, terrain, birds, and other slow-flying objects so as to ensure that the systems and those operating them focus on that which poses the greatest threat. You said, we are in the early stages of conducting a thorough reconstruction and analysis of all aspects of this incident, including timelines, communication, and sensor data. And you said identifying low altitude and slow speed aerial vehicles from other objects is a technical and operational challenge. Have I read that correctly, Admiral?
That is correct, sir, and I can go into greater detail on answering some of those questions in closed session.
Well, here's my problem. Like my colleagues up here on the dais and the public, I find the lack of planning on how to respond to gyrocopters and drones surprising and disappointing. These things are hardly new. The British Army flew a drone as early as 1917, and here we are nearly 100 years later, and we're just starting to tackle the problem. I want to invite Mr. Huerta, your attention to this question. When did the FAA first begin to think that drones may be a security concern?
Well, the FAA has specific direction from Congress to swiftly integrate unmanned aircraft into the National Airspace System. That was included in the FAA Authorization Act of 2012. And since then, we've published a roadmap for their integration, and we've embarked upon a stage integration process to find ways to integrate these into the National Airspace System. But we do cooperate with our interagency partners on the larger question of what they may pose as a security threat. Our mandate and our direction is to find a way to integrate them so that they don't pose a safety of flight issue.
Well, back to you, Admiral Gortney. You said identifying these vehicles is a technical and operational challenge. Challenge is a nice word for problem, something that we're really having a hard time with. So the question is, how long have you known this was a challenge, Admiral?
Sure, we've been working against a low radar cross-section target for probably over 25 years. I've been in the aviation business for over 38. So we understand the problem, we understand the technical challenges, and if we go to closed session, we can show you the solutions that we have in place and we are currently testing, but I can't do it in an open session.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most urgent, how urgent is this, gentlemen?
In the protection of the United States and Canada and the Homeland Defense, and my role as the NORAD commander, it is my primary responsibility, and it's on a scale of 1 to 10. It's on about a 50.
I look forward to closed session. Thank you. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go about this a little bit differently, a little bit more straightforward. At any time, did we have the ability to interdict and to shoot this guy down? Mr. Courtney, Admiral?
No, sir, we did not, because we did not have a detection, our ability to track it, or positively identify it to cue our sensors. If we had, I can't go any farther.
That's fine. That's fine. I obviously don't want to know anything that we can't do in public session. I'm just curious.
But I have that answer for you.
We hear around here that we had the ability but chose not to, but you're telling me that's not accurate.
I need to go to closed session.
Thanks very much. So then I guess it's the same answer regarding if the gentleman had wanted to, he could have crashed this into the Capitol building, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the same is true for the White House or the museums?
If there was an intent, yes, sir.
Okay. Would it have been different if it was a small single-seat airplane?
Yes, sir. Small single-seat airplane, size of a Cessna or smaller, would probably be able to track that.
Gotcha.
We would be. We do it we track them, and we have 2 incidents a month where we actually launch our helicopters on those sorts of things.
Okay. But similar result if it had been a drone or something smaller than a gyrocopter?
That's correct.
Okay. Who saw it first?
An officer with the United States Park Police saw it first.
And it's fair to say that you were the only one at the table who didn't know about this guy in advance, right?
We did
The
not.
Secret Service
We did not have
and
knowledge of it.
NORAD didn't? Okay.
We did not.
Okay, so the Secret Service knew. Who else knew about this guy in advance then? Park, Capitol Police. But the Park Police did know about the guy. Okay. We need to figure out why he left from Gettysburg. Given that any thought? Why would a guy drive from Florida to Pennsylvania to do this? Has anybody got any thoughts on that? Does that make sense to anybody? There's a lot of private airports, small airports between Florida and Gettysburg.
I think with an ongoing investigation, both legal and technical, I think it's difficult for us to answer that question.
Fair enough. All right. Here's my last question then, because it sounds like most of the stuff I want to know will have to do with enclosed setting. Admiral Gortney, were you advised not to come here today? Did anybody suggest to you not to come here today?
No, sir.
Anybody suggest that you not come to the briefing a couple weeks ago?
We were seeking permission and did not receive the permission. Why that happened, I'm not sure, sir.
From whom do you seek permission for that, sir?
We go through the Department of Defense.
And who would the next person up the ladder from you be in that?
My chain of command goes from myself to the Secretary of Defense to the President.
Okay. Mr. Celeste, same question.
Sir, I don't have a good answer for why we didn't show, and I apologize for not showing. That's not something the department normally does.
Did you seek permission to show and just?
I was not aware that you were trying to have me personally, I was not aware of this.
Okay. Mr. Huerta?
I understood it to be a scheduling issue. We had offered an alternative time the following afternoon, and we did not hear back.
Mr. Clancy, I think you were one of the ones who did agree to come, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. With that, I'll yield my time to the chairman. I guess we asked Mr. McLean and Chief Dine the same question, but I assume I know the answer there. So go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm an employee of the United States Department of the Interior, and they were planning to schedule a proper witness to come and attend, and I did attend the following day.
Okay. Chief Dine?
Yes, sir. I was here last week, and of course,
That's what I
glad to be here
expected.
today.
I'll yield the balance of my time to the chairman.
I thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Walker, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to look at the timeline again, make sure that I'm clear on it. But let me back up just for a second. How many different agencies or departments were contacted at some point past or during the week of by the Tampa Bay Times reporter? Can I, just by show of hands, who did he reach out to at any point? Secret Service? Okay. All right. Chief Dine, when did you first get contacted by the Tampa Bay Times?
That same day, a few minutes before he landed.
When you say a few minutes before, is that the 1 p.m. time frame again?
Well, 12:59, yes, sir, and then at 1 p.m.
12:59. He lands at 1:24, 22?
1:23-ish.
1:23. So can you walk me with what you did in those 22, 23 minutes? Can you sort of give me a timeline? What's your first call, just for my own education here?
Yes, sir. 12:59 was the email. That email was quickly sent to our investigative division, who began to try to pull up information. Then a minute later, he called our command center. They talked to him a little bit, and then that information was provided to our investigators as well.
When you say provided to your investigators, when you have somebody that's approaching the Capitol in this unidentified flying object, for lack of better expression, what do you do when you get that information that this is something that could be encroaching into the airspace? What happens? What's your next step?
Well, what happened in this case was there was no information that this was happening as they spoke, or that it was imminent. There was no time or date provided. What they did do was do some research into the individual himself, and also check to see, one of the questions was there a waiver provided? So we have a system to access that as well.
So are there any of these agencies that you contact once you hear that this is a possible situation? Are any of these, is there any communication between the different departments or agencies that this is a concern?
In this instance, we contact the NCRCC once it came to fruition.
Mr. Clancy, you said you got information on this as well. Is that correct?
Sir, Tampa Bay Times called our Tampa Bay office on April 13th, but there was no specification regarding Mr. Hughes, gyrocopters. The question was simply, would we be involved in civil disobedience displays by individuals? and we said we would be if it involved our protectee or one of our protective facilities.
Sure.
There's nothing specific.
One of the opening remarks, and I'm trying to remember specifically who talked about this, talked about the on the radar, distinguishable versus undistinguishable. Can someone speak to that as far as, help me understand that?
An unfiltered radar feed picks up everything. It is cluttered with, in addition to aircraft, will include things such as traffic on the streets. It'll include birds, anything that is moving around. And so for our purposes at the FAA, we filter it for what our primary function is, which is to safely separate aircraft. And that means we filter out small things that might be a distraction to a controller. Now, what our forensic analysis showed was that the radar did indicate something after the fact that we were able to piece together is most likely the flight of the gyrocopter.
But would you agree that after the fact may not be a good scenario?
No, I would agree with that. But the point being that an air traffic controller can't do his job with a very cluttered screen. And so what we're very focused on is how can we ensure that a controller is able to safely separate air traffic in our case.
Well,
Sir, if I could.
can you, yes, I will come to Admiral, just can you answer your own question there? How can that be more safety conscious as far as being able to get to the clutter on his own screen?
What we do is, because what the things that we're filtering out are things like birds or weather systems or small things that do not pose a threat to aviation safety. Now, we do provide the unfiltered radar to our partners across the government, and each of the individual participants filters it for their own purposes.
And I want to have time for the Admiral here, but help me understand this. Is there not, and you would know this being the expert, if someone is flying a gyrocopter, isn't that a different pattern than what birds or other things may be flying around on a radar or FAA system?
As I testified to earlier, it appeared and disappeared. It actually had much more in common with a weather system.
Okay, Admiral?
Yes, sir. The characteristics on a radar of an aircraft of this size, flying the speed and the altitude, it has the same characteristics of birds, of flocks of birds. It can appear the same way. And so we adjust, we take the feeds from the FAA as well as our own sensors, and then we adjust those filters based on the environmentals to give us the highest probability to pick up the smallest possible target that's a real target.
Thank you, Admiral. My time has expired. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Now recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Carter, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of you for being here. We appreciate the work that you do. I've got just 3 very quick questions for you, or maybe comments. First of all, Mr. Clancy, thank you for being here. I believe you were here a couple of weeks ago, and I closed my comments with saying that I hoped I didn't see you anytime soon, and here we are again. Yes, sir. Chief Dunn, I want to ask you, we had an incident in Cannon, I believe it was last week, where there was a suspicious powder that was found, and we had, I know that my staff had 4 emails sent to them during that time. Yet in this situation with the gyrocopter, we only had 1 email sent to us, and that was after the fact. Why the difference there? What different scenario led us to that situation?
The answer is that the systems we had in place failed, and we immediately fixed them. And I certainly understand your concern. So messages will be sent immediately now, and I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge that we sent them in those other instances.
We sent them in those other instances, but we didn't with the gyrocopter.
We sent some out, but clearly it was not comprehensive enough. Yes, sir, you're correct.
Okay. Gentlemen, it just appears to me that we're not keeping up with the times. And I've been sitting here and I hear what you say, that this needs to be discussed in confidential hearing, and I get that, but I'm still not confident, and I think the people want to be confident that we are keeping up with the times. Drones aren't anything new. They've been around, and yet all of a sudden we're having all these incidents. We read about the incident in Japan with the Prime Minister and the radioactive material that was sent there. That's scary, and it's scary for me, and scary for everyone. Are you comfortable and confident, and I want you to assure the American people that you are, that we've got this under control?
Sir, we can assure the American people that all of us at this table and the whole of government is working their very best to protect this nation and its citizens against the many threats that happen to be out there. And in closed session, I'll tell you what we're doing about this particular threat.
Does that mean it's not going to happen again?
I can never say it's not going to happen again, sir.
I understand that. The last thing is the communication, particularly among all of you. You know, look, I'm a freshman rep. I've been up here for 4 months, but I've been in business for many years, and I know that the communication is the key, and you have to surround yourself with good people, and you have to make sure everybody's talking to each other. But I'm just not getting that warm and fuzzy feeling here today after listening to all this that's happening with you, with y'all. And I just want you to assure me that if that has not been the case up to this point, that it will be the case in the future.
Sir, on the morning of 9/11, a telephone line went into effect, and it's never been hung up since. And it includes, we call it the Den, and it includes over 200 mission partners that to protect the American people for this particular threat, but for the air threat. It's called the Den. And it is exercised and it operates every single day. Twice a day, just for the National Capital Region, every one of those 200 mission partners are dealing with a penetration to our special flight, the SFR. Twice a day it occurs. And once a week we actually launch the Coast Guard helicopters in order to do it. So not only is it operating, it's exercised, it's utilized every single day.
Congressman, if I could too, there is an effort underway by the White House, the National Security Council, bringing all the federal departments together to look at these issues, in particular technologies that are currently available, technologies that are being in development, and looking at possible procedural changes as we encounter these kinds of situations.
Again, gentlemen, I want to thank you for the work that you do and encourage you, please. This is extremely important, and we really need you. So thank you for being on top of your game. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Recognize the ranking member.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for being here, but I just have 3 issues that I want to raise, and Mr. Carter mentioned one of them. You know, as I said here, I cannot help but be concerned about the communication situation here. Mr. Celeste, when you said that you didn't even know that the ranking and the chairman and the ranking member of 4 committees wanted you to be here the other day?
Sir, I did not personally know.
There's something wrong with that picture. There's something wrong with the picture. And let me tell you what I tell my staff. When something goes wrong and I find out about it, I wonder what I don't know about. And so, if you recall at the beginning, to all of you, at the beginning of I said, people talk about when the rubber meets the road, and then we discover there's no road. So communication is basic stuff. And then I want to just, this is directly connected. You know, one of the things that we've noticed in a lot of committees, not just this committee, but other committees, is that folks seem to want to operate in silos. Silos. And then you doing something over here, I'm doing something over here. I've got my turf, you got your turf. And it works against effectiveness and efficiency. And I just want to make sure that you all assure us that you truly are working together. I just think this is of such urgency. And my final point, I know you said that your staffs get together, top level staff. I guess that's what you all were saying. You all need to get together, and it should not be just to prepare to get your notes together for a hearing. I mean, you all are. I mean, you are there. You are paid to do a certain job, and this is out of all. I mean, this is with all the respect that I have for you, and it is tremendous respect. But when it's not about your deputy or whatever, it's you all. We look to you all. You are the experts. You're the ones who give your blood, sweat, and tears, and you all are the brilliant minds that we rely on every day to keep us safe. And I think you all need to be meeting. I know somebody said that the White House is trying to put something together where folks get together. I mean, that should come from you, particularly after we have an incident like the one that happened here. And so, you know, I'm looking forward, I'm anxiously looking forward, Mr. Chairman, to the closed session, and I know you're going to talk about that in a minute, so that we can get some answers. And if there are things that you could not answer, I hope you all took notes about what the things you said that we have to discuss in closed session, and then we'll do that. But again, I want to thank you for being here today, and we're going to press forward. And Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, and it's been a good, productive hearing, but we will go to a closed hearing at another date. We have 2 other subcommittee hearings. We got backed up with the Prime Minister. We appreciate your patience. You all have important jobs to do as well, so we will work together at another time. I do have a few more questions. The Tampa Bay Times published stories prior to this incident. The guy in the gyrocopter was live feeding a stream. I've heard a story from one of the major networks where they were watching it in New York, called down to the Capitol, and had staff, reporters, and producers go down on the grass to watch it happen. Do you all not monitor social media? Is Twitter like a new thing for you? I mean, this stuff is out there. Try Google alerts. It's there. If it's not showing up on the radar, it was showing up on the media's radar. And I don't understand why you aren't able to pick up that sort of signal. Because if you say that there's never any exposure in advance, we got to become more technically savvy. If you can truly have somebody read a story online, get it to the appropriate person in New York, send a producer, she walks down on the grass and watches it land, and you all have billions of dollars, billions, and you don't see a dude in a gyrocopter flying over. We deal with this on the border every single day. If I get Customs and Border Patrol up here, they would tell you about how they're detecting these. They'll tell you how the incursions are working. They've got special things that I can't talk about right here. I've been in them. I've seen them. They're very candid and open. And they're in the same department. That's why we had Homeland Security. After 9/11, we formed Homeland Security to communicate, to coordinate. And the only time you all 7 can get together is when you get called to the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. That's inexcusable. If the major networks can watch it live on television, I expect you to watch it on live television and do something about it. And I still have huge questions about what you would actually do. I want the men and women who are out there on the front line that have their hands on those triggers to know we got their back. We don't know if the person has mental capacity. I'm going to assume they do. But you cannot come into the Capital Region. You are not going to go on that Lincoln Memorial. You are not coming to the White House. You are not coming into the United States Capitol unimpeded. We're going to take you down. That's the prevailing attitude. We can get all these sob stories about how nice we want to be, but until we project force, until we let people know that if you come here, you're going to go down, then we'll figure out your disposition, then we're sending all the wrong signals. We're sending all the wrong signals. And so every time we have an incursion and they're not taken down fast and hard, some other nut job is going to get an idea, and terrorists are going to get more ideas. Figure it out. We pay you a lot of money, billions of dollars, and it's been a long time since 9/11. Figure it out. To the men and women who are doing this, God bless them. I cannot thank them enough. They do amazing things. 2 more questions and I'll be done. I would like, after this hearing, to get your comments or your reaction, if you're allowed, on the charges that were brought against this. One of the things I can hope I can work with the ranking member and others on, this gentleman was charged with a misdemeanor. This is a misdemeanor offense. The more stringent offense was his flying of a gyrocopter. But an incursion into the airspace, we got to look at that as a Congress. Finally, I've got to ask you, Mr. Clancy, is A.T. Smith still on the Secret Service payroll?
Yes, sir. He's a detailee to another Homeland Department.
Where does he work? What's his title?
Sir, I'm not aware of his title, but he works for the CBP.
Is he your chief of staff?
No, sir.
He doesn't hold the title of chief of staff.
So he's not, I don't know what his title is. He has not been.
Does he work in the Secret Service building?
No, sir.
Does he have a Secret Service vehicle?
Not that I'm aware of. No, sir.
You'll get back to me on that and confirm that?
Yes, sir.
Whose decision was it, yours or Secretary Johnson's, to detail Smith rather than transfer him out of the agency?
Sir, it was my decision.
So why do you keep him in the Secret Service? You sent out a press release. It says he's accepted a position within the Department of Homeland Security effective Tuesday, February 10th, 2015, but he still works for the Secret Service.
Sir, he's detailed to, he is on our payroll. Yes, sir.
Why?
Sir,
you told me, you told the ranking member, you told the world, you all sent out a press release saying he was being transferred, but he still works for the Secret Service, doesn't he? He still gets a Secret Service.
He gets a Secret Service paycheck. Yes, sir.
How long is he detailed for?
Sir, it has not been defined, the time limit.
It's been since February.
Yes, sir.
Ranking member, go.
Chairman Neal. Ms. Clancy, I'm just following up on that. So is he actually working? I mean, I know he gets a Secret Service paycheck, but is he actually working for the Secret Service in this detailed type of a position?
No, sir. I've had no contact with Mr. Smith.
None?
None, sir.
And is there we have details up here too, and so they have a limited time that they are with us. Can you tell us what the limitations are with wherever he is, and can you get that information to us?
Sir, I'll have to get back to you on that. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
You have done, Mr. Clancy, a very good job of building trust and confidence in it. It's flushed down the toilet when I read and hear about these things. You said to us, to me personally, multiple times, the White House did, Homeland Security did, Secretary Johnson did, Mr. Mayorkas did, that you were implementing fundamental changes.
Yes, sir.
And this guy's still on the payroll. You sent out a press release touting that he was going to another department and agency, and he does no work for the Secret Service, and yet he's on your payroll. Don't ever come back here to Congress and tell me that you have a financial problem when you've got A.T. Smith on your payroll and you say you don't have enough money. You shouldn't have to pay for that out of your budget. He is a very, very senior person. You personally promised that he was being moved and transferred out of the department, and he hasn't. I'm not buying this unlimited detail thing. This is just classic Homeland Security, shuffling around, and every one of your employees knows it. How do you think I know it? I don't go to work there. Your employees know it, and you lose their trust and confidence that you're actually implementing the change that you say they're going to. There was no consequence to all these things we've talked about. If he can keep his job, have a great title, get the same paycheck, get a detailee, when waters calm down, then we'll sort things out. With that, this committee stands adjourned.
Mr. Chairman, just 1 second. I just want to ask one more question, because the things you just said concern me. And I just want Mr. Clancy to have an opportunity to respond to that, if you want to. You may not want to. When those are some strong accusations, and I'm just wondering, do you have a response?
Sir, Mr. Chairman, all I can say is that I was looking for a fresh perspective in our leadership team, and we thought this was one opportunity to do that. I'm very pleased with the team that we have in place today. We have not gone back to those individuals who have taken these detailee positions. So I didn't have any other comments, sir.
Is it unusual for you to detail people? The Secret Service to detail people?
No, sir. We have detailees certainly up here in Congress. We are the beneficiary of detailees as well.
Right. Thank you very much.
Reclaiming my time, I got to just one more time. I got to tell you, you tried to tell the men and women of the Secret Service, you tried to tell Congress, you tried to tell the world that you were making changes. And everybody can look this up. It's public knowledge. But he earns $183,000 that comes out of your budget that could have gone to somebody else. Hire a new, fresh person, promote somebody within the agency, do whatever you might. But then you're going to come crawling back to Congress saying, I need more money, I need more money. The 4 assistant directors that you also released or were transferred away, are they also detailees, or are they still on the Secret Service payroll?
Sir, there is one is a detailee on our payroll, yes, sir.
And where is he detailed to?
Sir, he is also with, he is with ICE, sir. And
What do they do at ICE?
And they can correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe he's in a training position.
Will you provide to this committee by the week's end the disposition of each of the people that you supposedly were, you're cleaning house, you're making changes, you were touting that, you were telling a committee that. Tell us exactly with each and every one of them where they are, how long the detail is, how much they make, all the relevant details that our staff asks for. Is that fair enough? Can you do that by the end of the week?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We now stand adjourned.